trust Him more.
Grace and peace to you. This is the third session in our series, and you are welcome to Making Space for God, a journey from Lent to Easter. I am Pastor Gideon Archie, and it's a great privilege to walk with you into this holy season. As our Lenten journey unfolds, Scripture often leads us into the wilderness, not as a place of abandonment, but a place of formation. It is where distraction falls away and we learn to trust that God is truly with us. If this season of life feels uncertain or stretching, take heart. When we walk the wilderness with God, it becomes the pathway to transformation and the seedbed of hope. Today, we reflect together what does it mean to walk the wilderness with God in ways that lead us to deep transformation and enduring Easter hope. Let us step into this holy reflection with courage and trust. Lent is often described as a journey, a slow, intentional walk towards Easter. Yet, many seekers and lifelong believers quietly ask, why the long road? Why 40 days in the wilderness before resurrection joy? The scriptures reminds us that God rarely rushes transformation. Instead, God forms us along the way. So, to understand why this journey matters, we begin with the role of the wilderness in God's work of renewal. The wilderness and the way to resurrection, how does walking through the wilderness actually prepare me to truly experience the resurrection that is coming? You know, in the Bible, the wilderness is never a wasted space. Israel wandered for 40 years in the wilderness. Jesus fasted for 40 days. Again and again, God meets people not after the wilderness, but He does meet them in the wilderness. The wilderness strips away illusion of control and self-sufficiency and reveals our deep need for God. Resurrection is not denial of suffering, it is God's answer to it. So Lent teaches us that we cannot skip the wilderness and still understand Easter. Before the empty tomb comes, the long road of trust must be trodden. As we walk this road of trust, Lent gently shifts our focus from dramatic gestures to faithful, everyday practices. Faithfulness over the time forms the heart. How do small, faithful practices over 40 days lead to lasting transformation? Jesus often described God's work using quiet images. For instance, a mustard seed, yeast in dough, seed planted in soil. Transformation in God's kingdom is usually slow and hidden. The Bible tells us in Galatians chapter 6, verse 9, it encourages us not to grow weary in doing good, for in due time we will reap a harvest. Lenten practices are not about intensity but consistency. Small prayers, simple fasting, daily intensiveness where we attend to God. Other times, other faithful acts reshape how we see God, ourselves, and the world around us. Yet, even as we practice faithfulness, Lent reminds us that the power for transformation does not ultimately rest on us. God is the one who does the transformation work. How does Lent reminds me that God is the one who does the transforming work in me? One of Lent's greatest gift is humility. Scripture tells us in Philippians chapter 2, verse 13 that it is God who is at work in us, enabling the desire to grow in Him and in faithfulness. Our practice do not transform us. God does. Prayer opens us. Fasting reorients us. Simplicity creates space, but grace is always the active force. Lent teaches us to cooperate with grace rather than control the outcomes, trusting that God will complete the work He began in us. So as Easter draws near, Lent presses one final question: how this journey shapes not just a season, but a way of life. Carrying Lent beyond the Easter morning. How do I carry what I learned in Lent beyond Easter morning? Easter is not the end of the journey. It is actually the beginning of the resurrection living. The reason Christ meets the disciples on the road, at the table, and in ordinary moments. So what Lent teaches us: slowing down, listening, and trusting grace, becoming the foundation for everyday discipleship. Resurrection life is practiced, not rushed. Lent is not about earning resurrection, it is about being prepared to receive it. As we walk through the wilderness, practice faithfulness, and trust God's transforming grace, we discover that Easter is not only something we celebrate, it is something we live. And the journey continues.
Jesus, Jesus, precious Jesus, oh, for grace to trust Him more.